company NEVS, which stands for National Electric Vehicle Sweden, has been trying to revive the Saab, not really namesake because they can't legally, but the Saab sort of persona through electric cars for the better part of the last decade. In that time, there's been not much information out there on kind of what's going on, but within the last month, there have been two huge pieces of news that have come out relating to NEVS. One of them, unfortunately, very bad, and another one quite surprising that actually reveals a really secret, cool concept prototype that they were working on. First off, NEVS announced that they were shrinking their workforce and freezing all operations in Sweden because their parent company, Evergrande, who's based in China, has been kind of dealing with some scandal and massive debt. Obviously, that's very bad news. I'll get more into that here in a minute, but I want to tease what we're going to talk about in the second half of this video, which is the Emily GT. That is a prototype concept idea that they were working on, and it's really, really cool. We're just going to start off here with the bad news and sort of rip the band-aid off so we can finish the video on a high note. But let me make it clear that NEVS itself was not involved in any sort of scandal. This is all based on Evergrande, who's the parent company of NEVS. Like I mentioned in the intro, recently NEVS announced on their website that they were entering basically a hibernation plan, which meant that they're shutting down all of their facilities, production, everything that they have going on in an effort to, I guess, try to save money. This of course means that the factory that they had been occupying in Trollhättan is, I guess, at least temporarily shut down, and Polestar, oddly enough, has already sort of inquired about using it to develop their own vehicles and their battery packs, things like that. What caused this and led to it was NEVS parent company Evergrande being involved in some serious scandal and debt-related borrowing activities in China. Evergrande, if you don't know, and honestly, I didn't really know until they purchased from NEVS. They're basically one of the largest real estate companies, I guess you could say, in China. And since 2021, they have been really dealing with some scandal and debt. So much so they've been borrowing at an insane rate and actually have debts exceeding $300 billion. That's with a B, not an M, so pretty crazy. It's a bit difficult to find good information on this in English, but that's pretty much the gist of it. They've just been dealing with a lot of scandal, and obviously being in so much debt, they have to cut costs where they can. And unfortunately, NEVS was one of those things that they just have to sort of put off for now and are actually potentially looking for a buyer for it. With that crap out of the way, let's get to the exciting thing, which actually just came on the news within the last couple of weeks, and that is the NEVS Emily GT, which is a secret project prototype car that NEVS had been developing in Trollhättan. This project began in December of 2019, and it only took them 10 months to develop this project. There was a small secret team of engineers and designers working on it. They built it 100% from scratch, and they used the Porsche Taycan as the standard for this project. And if you can't tell, since they based it on a Taycan, yes, this was an EV. In total, they built 6 prototypes for the car. I read from a few different sources. One source said that these were never going to be production cars and they were just sort of a proof of concept type of thing, while another source said that they were destined for production had COVID not happened. The platform it was built on could support a battery the size of 175 kilowatts. The 6 prototypes that they did build, however, were using a 52 kilowatt hour battery, which is actually the same battery that they were using in the NEVS 9.3 over in China. When I mentioned that this was sort of a proof of concept type of car, the concept that they were trying to prove could work was these in-wheel motors, meaning you didn't have your separate electric motor that would sort of be its own little thing in the car. It was actually the motor and everything was all built into sort of the hub and the wheel assembly. So the Emily GT, the first sort of run that they had with development, they had 4 different motors, one at each wheel. Each produced 120 horsepower for a total of 480 horsepower. They were, however, working on an updated version, which was supposed to have 653 horsepower and over 1,600 foot-pounds of torque. Along with that, it also meant having over a 620 mile range and which is 1,000 kilometers, and a 0 to 60 time of 3.2 seconds. So those are truly insane numbers. But even the 52 kilowatt hour one had a 0 to 60 of about 4.8 seconds, which by modern electric car standards is pretty solid in itself. Because of this concept they're trying to prove with these independent wheel motor assembly things, that meant that these cars didn't, or this prototype I should say, didn't have anything like axles, drive shafts, gearboxes. It was all just one thing that sort of went into the hub of the wheel. This also meant that each wheel could be controlled 100% independently. This is actually something that Christian von Koenigsegg has been sort of working on for his own company, Koenigsegg, and he kind of worked with NEVS. From what I saw, at least briefly, he tested out the Emily GT, things like that. So with that in mind, does that mean that we could see the proof of concept from the Emily GT in a future Koenigsegg hypercar? Who knows? Maybe Koenigsegg's already been developing hybrids. I'm sure at some point they're going to be coming out with full EV cars, and they might feature technology like this. From looking at the styling of the Emily GT, it doesn't really have the typical Saab look. Obviously at this point, all of the Saabs are fairly outdated looking, with the exception of maybe the new Gen 9.5. Although Peter Dahl, who was a Saab designer and worked at Saab for the last couple of decades before they were shut down by GM, was the lead for this project, or one of the leads. So some people are saying that they see some NG95-ish looking styling bits in the Emily GT. I'm not sure I can 100% agree with that, but I can see where some people might think that it could have been sort of a successor to the NG95. Now that's not to say I don't think it is a good looking car, because it is really beautiful, and there aren't many interior shots of it, but the interior looks very modern, just about on par with any other modern luxury EV out there. So considering they did this whole thing in 10 months and built it from scratch, I think they did a hell of a job. And unfortunately, with Evergrande cutting all production and development with NEVS, this does unfortunately mean the cutting of the Emily GT project. And Evergrande has actually been looking for a buyer for NEVS for the past couple of years. I don't know how seriously they've been looking. Obviously now they're probably going to be looking a lot more, seriously and looking to make a deal with someone, who knows who, but whoever, hopefully someone buys NEVS and their rights, the rights to the Emily GT and its proof of concept, things like that, can actually turn it into something. Because from what I read, it seems like it wasn't too far off from being production ready. I know a lot of people like to dream about Koenigsegg buying what's left of NEVS and all of that fun stuff. I don't know how realistic that is. It would be awesome if they could, but I guess time will tell. Maybe Polestar could buy some of that stuff and use it in their cars. Who really knows? But with that being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Obviously, overall a disappointing video for sure, but this NEVS Emily GT thing was definitely something special, and I'm glad that despite getting all this crappy news about the company being put on hibernation, we at least got to see a glimpse of one of the really cool projects they had been working on. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I'll see you all next time.